My name's Caroline Poynton. I'm recording this off YouTube. I'm getting as much evidence together about King Charles once again.
There.
Hiya, Richard.
King Charles is due to receive a petition from the Jamaican government for slavery reparations. He should just say no.
No, but he'll say yes. Watch.
But somehow...
He's already said yes.
The Jamaican government has declared that it will be sending over a team to hand a petition to King Charles III for him to investigate how they go about claiming reparations from the UK government for slavery. Yep, that's what they're going to do. September the 6th is the date. And they're due to come over. And I'm wondering whether he's already set the time for them to come and give him their petition. Now, according to The Guardian, the petition, first announced in June last year, asks King Charles to use his authority to request legal advice from the Judicial Committee of the London-based Privy Council, the final court of appeal for UK overseas territories and some Commonwealth countries, on whether the forced transport of Africans to Jamaica was lawful, if it constituted a crime against humanity, and whether Britain was under obligation to provide restitution to Jamaica for slavery and its enduring consequences. Yep, they're going to ask the King to involve himself in their investigation.
Right.
That way hoping to get the answer that they want to get. And the Culture Minister of Jamaica, Olivia Grange, said the following: that this petition is being made to the King in his capacity as head of the state of Jamaica and from whom we expect protection.
No, because he's multi-faith now, he's wrong religion or faith.
And further, September the 6th is the same date that in 1781 the slave ship Zong left Africa bound for Jamaica. And during the voyage, was it 144 of the 442 slaves were thrown overboard to so they could claim insurance for losses on the journey. Because the journey fell into a bit of difficulty on the way, the ship. So, of course, there is a lot of emotion tied up in this. As ever, politicians using emotion to drive their message home. I suppose that's only to be expected in a case like this. As I said, the King should just say, look, it's long past. Now, this was hundreds of years ago. Was it, as I said, 1781? So, you know, that's gone.
Yeah.
We now need to move on.
Yeah. Well, he's moved.
But they're not going to let this one go, are they? Not likely to, anyway.
Well, they've moved on.
Now,
hang on, King Charles has moved on with a new modern
will
world.
almost certainly have talked to Keir Starmer about this, won't he? He of international law,
that's why
open borders, trying to be nice to everyone on the planet. So I'm sure that, I don't know, but I'm sure that that Keir Starmer will have advised the King to go very gently with this one, not to raise any hackles or to cause any angst, but just to, I don't know, fit in for the day, be very nice, very pleasant, smiley, soft power, you know. He might even have advised him to give in and let the Privy Council look at this particular case.
He will do,
which would be a mistake as far as I'm concerned.
He will do, because I want some more Jamaicans there.
So you can imagine the soft approach that the King will probably take. We know his view on all things foreign, don't we?
Yeah.
They come first before the people, as ever. As does this government, think the same way.
Yeah.
So I can't see a big fat juicy no emanating
about
from
to
his
say
lips
that.
at all, can
I
you?
was going to say no, were they? They're not going to say no, they're going to say yeah.
Yeah. As I said, this isn't about directly demanding reparations. No, it's a bit cleverer than that, really, in that it's asking the king to involve himself in the investigation, to get buy-in from the king and therefore the taxpayer into an investigation.
I don't think it should be allowed that.
So they're going to him, please,
Begging.
King, our head of state, use your organ of state, the Privy Council,
And
to
now
show
it's
us,
king of all faiths and
to
all
advise us
religions, all
on how we
cultures,
do this,
bang. That's the two
on how we
pocket
rip
now, aren't they?
many billions, tens of
'Cause you
billions
gave it
of
to
pounds
everybody.
from the British state
To the fucking...
to give to Jamaica.
Less funding here
Yeah.
again.
Now they're going to look at this,
spending or anything
as
else.
the Guardian article said, for three different things. What they want is a decision from the Privy
What I
Council
want
to say
is Sarah Jane
whether
Baxter
or not,
there, Amelia,
let's get this right, whether or not
to Poland.
the enforced transport of Africans to Jamaica was a legal
Quite
enterprise.
sure Poland will accept. I'm pretty
Was
sure
it
that
legal to
Poland
do
will
so?
accept quite a few
Secondly,
people.
Was that process a crime against humanity?
And Russia.
Now, the UN has already ruled by
I
a
think
huge
Russia
number of
will accept
votes,
a lot
I've got them
of
here,
men,
123 for,
people,
3 against, and 523, 123 for and 3 against, the rest abstained, on a vote claiming the transatlantic slave trade was the gravest crime against humanity. So the UN has already ruled itself that it was the gravest crime against humanity.
Oh well.
Yeah. So if it was a crime against humanity, and whether the Britain is under an obligation to give Jamaica reparations as a result. Now, of course, what they're hoping and what they're relying on is the woke principle that the crimes of history must be judged on the modern principles of morality, on today's laws, on today's morals, on the things that we hold dear today. Not what was due back then, because it sounds to me, if someone can insure their ship and the slaves against loss during the slave trade, that it was perfectly legal to do it back then.
Yeah.
But what the Jamaican people will be relying on is us to say, oh, no, that must have been a crime against humanity because it's slavery, and we have to measure that by today's standards, don't we? We have to state
Oh well, if that's the case,
that it's
then we need to
under
measure
today's
everything else
standards, it's
by
a crime,
today's standards
therefore it was
as
a
well,
crime back
by
then.
by today's and all the other days' standards. Well, we'll go back of the days when
Yeah.
it was done.
See that one coming, don't you?
Yeah.
And that way they will get the answers that they want.
We'll still get
will
illegals. There
be.
we are. We'll still get
Illegal.
illegals.
It will be decided as illegal by
Yeah,
the
we'll get
woke
all the fucking
Privy
Jamaican
Council.
illegals now.
I
All
bet
them
it's
coming
just
from
as woke
fucking
as everything
Jamaica
else in
now,
this country.
smashing up from Jamaica.
Number 2, that because the UN says it's a crime against humanity, the Privy Council has to agree, although we abstained in that
So we'll get
vote.
rid of the king.
So, and then, do we have to pay reparations?
Yeah.
I think the UN also agreed that we have to pay trillions in reparations as well, to all and sundry. But no one ever mentions the black slave owners in Africa selling black slaves
to Jamaica.
to white Europeans, did
Yeah.
they? They don't want to
No,
look
yeah.
at that particular
They
side
don't-
of the
no, they don't want-
transactions.
no.
They don't want to know about that.
They don't want to know about half of it. They just want to know about the bits they can get money for.
They're not interested in that, are they?
Bits they can make money on. So now we can't do Palestine. Now
And I
we're doing
doubt the
Jamaica.
King's interested in that either, really, to be honest.
No.
he'll only be interested in being nice to these Jamaicans, his people in Jamaica.
Says you don't want them
Look after them.
Huh?
With taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if the Privy Council does come out in favour of this, then the Privy Council, which most people have not even heard of,
Nope.
don't know that it exists, is a bit of a,
Quango.
maybe it's a bit of an anachronism. Maybe that needs to go as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because we've never heard of it. Why have we never heard of it then? That's secretly done as well. Everything's secretly
Something
done.
needs to change, doesn't it?
That's why we don't hear about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
what needs to change is the king needs to go.
And no one is interested in looking at the Barbary slave trade either.
Nope. And what about our slave trade
And I
that
looked
we've
this up,
had on our
but
girls being
The biggest
raped?
slave trade
Oh,
of
that's
this
not
type,
slavery, is it?
transatlantic,
When I'm
appears
being
to have been
trafficked out as a
the
child, that's not
Brazilian
slavery, no?
Portuguese slave trade.
Well, it is.
5.8 million slaves. And it's
What about all the
Google
grooming
told me
gangs
it's the biggest
scandal? Is that not
chunk
being
of all.
slaved out as well? Well, it is being slaved out, isn't it?
So maybe they need to be hauled up.
Well, maybe that needs to be hauled
Why
up
is it
as well.
always, only ever,
For one side
the
only.
British
Have
that
to
get
pay
hauled
out.
up for this sort of thing?
Yeah. Because they can do it because we'll call us racist.
We hold a
and
special
Nazis
place
and
in
the
the
rest
hearts
of
of the world, don't we?
Yeah, the one that they hate us in, not the like us.
And then,
They don't like
the
us.
only other group that suffers equally is the Israelis.
Yeah, the Jews.
The Jews.
Yeah, the Jews in English.
No one can ever forgive the Israelis or the British.
Nope. That's why
They
I
can
just said.
forgive the Germans, the two
Yeah.
World Wars.
They can forgive King
They can
Charles being a
forgive
German.
Japan for the horrors in the
Yeah.
Second World War. They can forgive Italy for its part
They
in
can
the Second
forgive
World
fucking
War.
Saudi Arabia for all their slavery.
But they can never forgive the British or the Jews. Ever. Makes you think, doesn't it? Really.
Why? Because we've got with the one arm with the
So
money.
all I want to hear anyway is from Charles to say, no, too long ago, we can't
We
go
won't
digging
hear
up the
that.
history books just to find ways for people to
Make some money.
try
make a
and
quick buck.
shame us or bully
He
us
won't
into
say
handing
that,
over
mate.
loads
He
of
won't
money.
say anything because he's a coward.
But somehow, I don't think he'll say that.
Exactly what I've just said. He's not gonna.
I think
Changed
that
his
this
religion.
government, whether it be Starmer, well at the time it won't be, it will
And
by then be
Burnham.
Burnham,
He'll give it.
will probably try to kick it all into the long grass.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll do an investigation, we'll have a committee on it.
Bullshit.
And there's only one conclusion
Well,
that committee will come to.
well,
It'll take 10 years,
Mm.
but it'll come to that conclusion. I just want to hear a big fat no. Otherwise, there's no point having a monarch looking after us,
No, we haven't
Or,
got one anyway. He's not looking after
or a
us.
government, is it?
Or a government.
I think they
We've got
will
terrorists.
cave to emotional pressure in the end and
Organisation.
international pressure. We need to start going it alone in this country.
We've been
Tell them
taken
all
over
no,
by
tell them all to
terrorists.
bog off. Yeah. That's my view.
That's my view.
And on that note, I'll say thank you very much
Thank
for
you very
joining me.
much, Jeffrey. Bit more about the fucking king again. He's a twat, innit? He's doing it on purpose. He really is. He really is.
How do you express surprise in British English? In films, you will see so many times people saying or expressing themselves with a vocal, oh my god. But it isn't always the way we express surprise.
No.
We have many more advanced expressions and interjections that are brilliant to use, so you won't be feeling repetitive, always using the same words over and over again. Plus, some people out there might not recommend expressing surprise with oh my god for religious reasons. So in this lesson, we're going to have some fun with some typical British ways.
Although while
to
let's get back to King Charles.
Title that came from the Pope, and it was on a treaty or on a thesis that he wrote about marriage, ironically. Yeah. But that's the point, beside the point. Once there was the dissolution of the monasteries and the split with Rome, it became to do with the Parliament that brought it in, that we were, the monarchy was, was linked to the
It's always
established
been
church, the
yeah.
Protestant church, the Church of England. I think it's a huge error. I think it's pretty damning for the Church of England too. I'm not quite sure how it's got under the radar. And it's almost
Yeah,
like,
they
you know,
did
it's
it
just
under the
been,
radar, that's
just
fine.
been allowed in as a footnote. And given where we are with this, well, with this country, you know, in 50 years' time, maybe they're doing it because if George is on the throne, there may well be, you know, Christianity or the Church of England will be completely outnumbered by other faiths. And they're trying to stay and survive. But aren't they missing the point? This is fundamentally a Christian country, a Western civilization Christian country.
Yeah.
And constitutional monarchy is linked to that.
It's absolutely shocking because we won't get this back now. This is gone. This is not coming back. It poses the question, obviously, for this kind of change to happen, I would assume that King Charles would have had in-depth conversations with Prince William regarding this change, as well as Buckingham Palace being lived in. What would be happening behind the scenes?
Well, clearly William is involved in the conversations, but these are decisions I think that the King will make essentially on his own. Essentially, yes, there will be advice from William and from the Archbishop of Canterbury and his the people that he advised him, his private secretary, Sir Clive Alderson, and others. But I think this is Charles, really. I think that before he is essentially
I think this is all Charles mainly.
somebody who believes in multi-faith cooperation, and surely we all do on that, but that doesn't mean you effectively disestablish the Church of England, which is essentially what he's doing.
Don't mean you change your religion, does it?
And I think a lot of people will be sad by this because it's a question of identity of a country, a sovereign nation.
Yeah, changing
And I
everybody's
think that
identity. He
is
wants to
something
change his
that
own
is shifted,
identity because he doesn't like
in a
himself.
footnote,
And he's trying to change everybody else's
in the
identity.
Sovereign Grant report. And I think that should have been more open to discussion. A lot of people, I think, will be surprised by this. There's been nothing coming out
changing
from
my
the
identity.
new Archbishop of Canterbury. We've heard nothing from the General Synod. We've heard nothing, and we're just told that this is happening.
It wants us just to change
Yes,
it.
I think Charles is trying to make his mark about the type of monarchy he wants to be. And we all know
because
he's
he's
going
already
with cancer,
changed
so
it
his
a
reign
long
is going
time
to be
ago, that's why.
curtailed. But at the same time, these are quite big seismic changes. And yes, he must have consulted William, but I think he sort of almost wants it on his own watch.
What do you think the late Queen would make of this? Because growing up, for me, I knew exactly who the late Queen was. I knew what she was. I knew
she
what
already
she
knew
stood
what he was
for.
doing.
And I felt very safe.
Knew what King
I
Charles
felt
was doing.
that we were a constitutionally Christian country, which were proud of. It feels like in such a short amount of time, King Charles has destroyed many foundations that the late Queen protected and gave her life to protect.
Well, it simply wouldn't have happened on the Queen's watch. She's a high church, Anglican, devout Christian. There's just absolutely no way any of this would have happened on her watch. Look, the Duke of Edinburgh was somebody who was always exploring multi-faith.
Always exploring it.
And the connectivity between faiths. He felt that was important to have that interfaith dialogue. And I do agree with that.
No, I
But that's a huge step from going from there to saying we are now, the monarch is effectively...
Should be learning his own
faith.
Is
effectively
how to be a proper king.
Which is what we're saying.
That's what he should have been learning.
Because if the monarch, who is the sovereign of this country, is saying that he is no longer effectively no longer the supreme governor of the Church of England. But what I don't understand, is none of this has been discussed openly in any way. I mean, it hasn't been discussed from what we understand, by the General Synod. It hasn't been discussed anywhere else. And I think that, this is quite a shock. And there have been in-depth discussions with the Church of the new Archbishop of Canterbury, then surely they should have been shared with the Christian community. But from what I've heard, nothing has been shared at all. So I can't imagine if this was a Muslim nation,
they've gone a bit
woke as well, haven't they? A decision by the Supreme Governor of the Muslim Church or whatever had made that decision, or even another religion, they wouldn't have caused a massive stir.
Not saying you can't be gay, and saying you should not be able to get married in a
multi-faith republic. There'll be uproar in the streets.
They could get
I
married.
understand what's going on.
But in a fucking registry, not a church.
You have a growing
end of that.
A growing
and that's the way it should be.
More and more different religions. a lot more from Islamic, the different strands of Islam. And clearly the
To the
monarchy
day in
and
the Bible,
William
you know.
and clearly under Charles,
I could
who,
say,
want
the
to
Bible
be
says
embracing
not to be
all of their
gay.
subjects.
I was going to say, no,
I
I
feel
think
that,
the
that's,
Quran,
you can
the
do that
Bible says
without
that as well.
completely changing
Yeah, and changing
um,
everything.
the fabric of
The
the
fabric of
country that
people,
you're
yeah.
supposed to be the head of the nation of.
Do
And
you
he's
think
not
we're
the
looking
head
at
of
the
the nation of the
beginning
country.
of the end of the monarchy?
Yes.
And I don't mean that this time next year it would be over, but do you think when we zoom out and look at the wider picture,
Yeah.
it feels to me like things are winding down?
Look, I think that it's quite clear that Charles is doing things very differently, actually, from the late Queen. I mean, I think, in terms of religion, what is he? We know he's read, we know he's somebody who's read the Quran and he speaks
Yeah.
Arabic and he's with a lot of different religions.
No,
And
he does with
understand-
Islam, not a lot of different religions at all,
But,
mate. Just Islam.
And he has in his garden in
I
Highgrove, he
don't
has
see him
an
doing
Orthodox chapel.
Buddhism
And
or
he used to
anything
go off
yet.
to Orthodox
I just see him doing
retreats
Islam.
in
That's
Greece. But the bottom line here is,
All I see him doing is
he is
Islam.
supposed to be
I
a
don't see him
sovereign
doing anything for the
representing
Jews. I don't see him doing
his
anything
country,
for
the
the
country
anyone else.
which was when the Queen
The
came.
Mormons, the
So,
fucking
I think
Catholics,
it's over 20% think she
the
actually
nuns.
had
I don't
been
see him
appointed
doing
by God.
anything for the nuns.
So, and that is very much
The
a
only thing we see
Western
him doing
civilization
stuff
of
for is
Christian
Islam.
in society.
That's it.
With the Church of England at its core, Anglican
So,
at its core,
it's
you
changed
weren't even allowed to
religion
be
to
a
Islam.
prime
Just get
minister
it
as a
right.
Catholic, for example.
We
So
could be
the
about
difference
what's going
between
on
going
out there.
from one, it's almost gone from one extreme to the other. Now, obviously, I would have thought there's been discussion with William. William has already just said that, he wants to be representing his generation. Royalty with a small r, I think is the expression that was used. Well, that in itself is reducing the grandeur of the monarchy, which makes it more important and more relevant on a world stage. Does it mean that well, the beginning and the end? I certainly think it shows that there is a divided crown and a disconnect with certain people in the country. And I think these decisions are being made by a small number of people, with reference to a small number of advisors. Advisors that, let's be honest, will probably not really be ones who will be critical of the king, or who, if their ideas are different, will probably not be there for very long. So this is clearly coming from the king, and that he wants to do this. As I said, when I was writing out King Charles III, there was a lot of talk about this, and I pinned it down, getting to a very high level
We talked
about
about
this,
before
and
he
they came
became
back
king.
with absolute assurance.
We
that
talked
he would
about
be,
it a
when he
long time
became
ago
king,
when Queen
defender of the
Elizabeth
faith.
reigned.
He's been on the throne since 2022. September 22.
No, we talked about when Queen
It's,
Elizabeth was here.
acceded to the throne. At that time, that's a
Queen
radical
Elizabeth.
shift from where we were with Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah, and you wrote the book Charles at 70, which offers so many insights into who he is and how he operates. I was stunned by some of the bombshells in this book. The fact that he didn't want things like the full burqa to be banned. He wanted people to have the option if they wanted to wear it. And you really explore so many
doing it.
angles in it that often aren't discussed in a nuanced way in the mainstream media. When you were writing this book, could you see what was coming with King Charles and the reign, or has this taken you by surprise?
No, I think he's gone further than I thought. I thought that actually, because he very much stated that when the two roles as Prince of Wales, the heir,
He was
and the
lying
king are
to
very
me.
distinct. So I didn't think he would do things like this. I actually think, in terms of his soft power diplomacy, he's done a pretty good job. But in terms of radical shifts of what the monarchy is, I think that this is a step too far. I think that there's been no real consultation. I've heard nothing about it in the media whatsoever.
Nope.
In terms of this shift was going to happen. But I was conscious of it at that time when writing the book, which obviously updated to become Our King Charles III. But I was very conscious of it because, if you remember, there's a whole section in Charles VII called Defender of Faith, Defender of the Faith. And then I go into the whole detail at the start about how, this wasn't given because it was an Anglican thing. It was given as an award to Henry VIII from the Pope. But going further along the line, it seems to me that there's been a radical shift in thinking by him or that he's now got the power and feels confident enough to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make that decision. Now, a lot of people, I'm sure, at the BBC and lots of trendies will probably be saying, oh, no, it's fine because you're representing a wide community. That isn't really the point, actually. The point is, in a very short
Because if
space
he's
of
offending
time,
a faith, he's
you
going
know,
to change the law, isn't it?
4 years
Of all
since
faiths,
it's
you've got to have to
been,
change
you
the
know,
law
in
with
4 years
everybody's
since it's been died,
religion and
there's
law.
been a radical shift, and that means
To everybody's
that
laws.
the
From
ones
around
that
the
don't
world.
shout very loudly, the Christian, the Church
Well,
of England,
I was going to say, because
really should be shouting a bit
I
louder.
was going to say, like what's in the Quran and that,
So
is
if I-
part of
if
the,
I
their
imagine
law
this
of
was a
the Muslim
different
land.
a different
Maybe
religion.
not all of it.
They'll be
but
shouting
some
from
of
the
what's in the
rooftops.
Christian Bible and
And I
whatever is
feel,
part of the law
I feel
of the
that
land.
this is misrepresenting the people in the
There's
Shire.
things
the
there,
quiet
like Ten
people,
Commandments and
places
that
where
part of the law
England
of the
is
land.
England.
And then you assume that's
not
like the
in a
Ten
city,
Commandments
it's not
or the
the,
Seven Commandments
the
of the
news from
Quran.
the BBC, but reality
Part
is
of the
when
law
people do
of their
go to
land, that's
church
what
on
their
a Sunday, and they know their
the
local
Sharia
preacher,
law is
and
part of.
they go through cups of tea with him
Made
after
of. The
service.
same as
Yeah.
our laws made as
They are
part
being
of the Ten
misrepresented
Commandments.
here because they're just quietly getting on with their lives,
Yeah.
which essentially is a pretty much a British
So that means
trait.
they're going to have to
But
do
I
all the
cannot
laws.
believe or imagine that my grandparents would think that this is acceptable.
To,
And I'm not
to
in any
to
way,
suit
and I'm not in
everybody
any way
else's
deriding the
religion,
fact
everybody
that
else's
the king
culture.
is a very strong person when it
Oh,
comes
yeah.
to interfaith dialogue.
This,
But dialogue is one thing, completely trashing what you were,
No,
500
you should
years,
not be doing that.
what is it, since the Act of 1788, whatever it was, the bottom line is you're trashing hundreds of years of tradition and history.
The
And you're
difference
also
is
trashing
people that
a
learn
core
that,
element
it's not because the Muslim,
of
all the people that
what
do learn
you
that is because they're going to
stand
be
for as
teachers
a
in that.
monarch.
We saw when this news came, then the
It's not that
story
I don't
started.
want
Harry's
to respect
security,
somebody else's
he's not getting
religion.
it. Meghan
Of course we
Markle
can
won't
respect
come.
somebody
And
else's
it's
somebody else's
typical
whole race and
destruction.
religion.
And the house,
Yes.
and
Just
Buckingham
because
Palace
we,
is
but
not
we
to be lived
can
in.
have
So
our
that
own
was
religion
clear,
as well.
easy story.
We don't need
And I thought that was probably
I
the
can't
only
be
story
Muslim. No, I can't, I'm
that was
not.
going to get traction.
I'm not Muslim,
not
and I
anything
don't
else,
want to
not particularly not the
I'm not
the Harry and Meghan
we
stuff
can't
comes
change who
in,
we are.
and that completely
Any of the
blows it
countries, I was going
away
to say.
from what is
We
actually.
cannot change the law
I'm
of
surprised
land.
there's not been major issues
Mm.
in the Synod. I'm surprised there's not been major issues in Parliament about this.
Yeah, well, they don't
It also brings up the question as well. You reference the fact that there hasn't been a lot of
And then they're not
mainstream
they've been
media
told to shut
coverage
up,
on
I
it, so it
think.
dropped, and then the Harry and Meghan story
Get
started.
servant up to the king,
And
don't
this is
they?
why things
To
like
lead
your
to the king.
Substack, Robert, are so important, because you're not controlled. Do you feel by being on the Royal Rota that you have to stay within certain lines? Because
Yeah.
obviously you
Because
are,
obviously
even though
you're going
you're
to have to,
kind
yes.
of part of the establishment in some ways, you're very different to the establishment. I never feel like I'm speaking to someone that's media trained, or I don't feel like I'm speaking to a Rebecca English or a Richard Eden. I feel like I get.
Well, Richard
what-
actually is not on the road, but he's obviously within the parameters of. There's only Rebecca's on the road to there. But what I would say is, as a journalist of 35 years plus covering this royal family, you really, I think you've got the right to say what you think rather than what they tell you to do. The only thing that I would abide by, really, in all honesty, is the embargoes. That's it. I don't see why anything else I should be outside the parameters. Now, there may come a moment when somebody says you're out, we don't want you on it. Difficult, I think, legally for them to do that. If they did it, we'll see where it goes. But having been a member
We
of
should
it,
be allowed
I
to say
will
what you
continue to
want.
be a member of it, and I'll abide by. Not, I don't believe there should be any rules in
Within
journalism, but I'll abide by
Well, yeah, if
embargoes.
you're in a
What
certain
my
way.
opinions are based upon
Well,
35
yeah, I
years
mean,
of
obviously
experience,
I swear.
which is, by the way, probably the combined amount of people, many years as the people at the Buckingham Palace. I've probably seen 15 press secretaries, so I don't really necessarily agree with what they have to say, but I listen to it. But
I
my
don't
opinion
listen to what
is
they
completely
say.
different. Is my opinion based upon experience. It shouldn't be, I shouldn't be hampered by that to do with the Royal Rota. Embargoes, okay, if they're giving me
I'll
information.
listen to the spirit world, what they're
I'll
telling
stick
me,
to it,
yeah.
You know how the game works, and I want to touch upon
And then put the
there
information,
recently was the
obviously,
Climate Action
What
Week
they've been
that took
telling you, the
place in
information's
London.
coming in.
I mean, they love a
coming out
field mouse,
slowly.
don't they? These
Yeah.
elites, they love a field mouse and a cloud. Now,
mouse because they are nice.
there was Prince Harry's Travelist advert that was shown at it. There was a
Quite
video
not
of King
fair,
Charles shown at it, and
About
Prince William was attending.
About if they're coming or not.
It's
Meghan
impossible
and the rest of
that the palace did not know Harry's advert would be shown. And the reason for that is that obviously when we're dealing with King Charles and Prince William, wherever their name is associated, the palace need total transparency
Yeah.
regarding who would be on that bill and so forth. Now, we've disagreed on the establishment plot to bring Harry back. What do you make
You
of
see,
the
of all
fact
these
that
things,
we've
they
got
want all them
the heir,
things, yeah,
the
the way they
spare,
are.
and the king all taking
Then you'd
part
be
in
able
the
to
same
walk among
big
people.
global
Well, an
scheme?
advert's different.
I'm
to
sorry,
taking part in an
but the
advert.
person
But
in
what I-
Poland,
what
you can
I
walk
would
around
say
Poland
is
with the
this,
people.
I
You can go and
don't
get a cup
think
of
there's an
coffee.
establishment plot to bring Harry back.
I mean, he
Harry
has probably
is
got
pushing
security.
very, very
I'm
hard.
not saying he's not got
I
security.
think that the
Obviously,
king is
look at
open to
person
that,
that's.
but we've seen
But he,
even this week the briefing,
he has
the
to have one
anti-briefing,
person that's security
negative
or
briefing.
something.
One
or
saying
whatever.
yes, he can use the Royal Palace, but it's not been
No.
not been accepted.
He doesn't
The
need
other
to
side's
be.
saying, well, we're not coming now, we're not getting the security.
I'm going
You
to
know,
say
the
all
bottom
this
line
because
is
the person in
there's a
Poland is well
disconnect
liked
still.
by people.
Probably
He can
less
walk
with
among
Charles than
people.
Harry. I think,
And he
Mary's
does.
did what you thought. You're living with cancer, you don't know how long you've got
Donald
left.
Tusk,
I'm
Donald
sure
Tusk,
in your heart, whatever way you
from
look at it,
Poland is.
you
Isn't
try to
it?
build bridges before
Poland is
you
mental
pass
what
up and
they've
pass
done.
away. And you try to make sure that
We
you've
need to
got
do
no
the same
effects. Now, I don't
as
have a
Poland.
problem
We
with
need
the
to do
father
the same as
and the
freaking
son in
Russia.
that
With the
respect,
call
trying
in
to have some
Russia.
sort of relationship.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what,
when it
these
comes
must
to
have
the
given a better
establishment,
job
establishment
at
effectively
keeping illegal
going
immigrants out
forward
of their
with Prince
country
William.
than
But Prince
we
William's no way trying
And
to build
Europe's
bridges
doing
with
it.
Prince Harry. Not in a million years. I think Harry desperately knows that when his father is gone, where's the money coming from? And William will be controlling
In
the
charge
purse
of it.
strings. I think this is not only about brand Harry, and I'm not quite sure how they spend
He's probably
so
just
many
trying to get back in
millions.
before
It can't all be on
before
security,
Charles does
Harry.
go.
He
But
inherited
to get
millions.
visitors, his
He
dad,
lives, I don't know what he actually does.
no matter what,
for
you
his
know, it's
work,
None of us know,
Prince
Robert.
William and
None
but
of
he
us.
makes a load of
Sorry
money.
to
He
have
made
to
a load
say
of
that
money from his book,
about
which
King
is you're
Charles.
lucky. He does what he did.
about their
He trusts his
dad,
family and did that. He
that's
made a load of money from
unfortunately
Netflix. I mean, how much money do they actually need?
what
I
I'm
keep
saying
thinking
is
of
all true.
Daydream Believer by the
Well,
Monkeys.
and
How much do we really need? If they want that
Princess
freedom,
Diana's angry.
that freedom
with
flight,
King Charles
surely
as well. Yeah.
30
God's
million in the
angry
bank,
with him.
you should be all right for the rest of your life. But it doesn't seem it is. Now, I think that he wants to come back because maybe he's bored, but that's really not
Well,
our
he had
problem.
enough of
He
Meghan,
made
yeah.
the decision. And the issue of the security has been very clear. It's something his father told him. He said, be very clear about going, you have a plan. And the security was raised. I know that for a fact. Because he said, what about security? The king? And Harry thought it would just be coming natural. It would just follow him because of his own entitlement. And of course it isn't, because, the taxpayer, there are rules, and Harry has to abide by them. And this time it comes back. You're not getting the security.
Well,
Now,
why don't you need
if that's the
security
case,
everywhere?
he
It's
doesn't
going to
want
go
his
around the
kids.
world.
So
Doesn't
be
matter where
it.
he is
I mean,
around the world.
that's not our problem.
If
I
they're
think
going to
it's
get
sad
to
for
someone,
children.
they'll
I think
fucking
it's
get
sad
to you.
for anything.
As
It's
they've
got
already
nothing to do
shown.
with that.
No, but what I'm saying
this
is
is
these people are
innocence
going to
that
get to
got these
someone to
parents.
do whatever.
And it's a bit sad for the king
Get
because he
to
doesn't get to see his
someone.
grandchildren. But then, there is another grandfather down the road, and not far from William and Harry,
Yeah.
where they live. He's never seen the grandchildren either. Maybe it's because they wanted to come over because the king, is the man who's got the purse strings. Now that's probably some people say that's a cynical view. But I actually don't think it is. That he must know that he's got a limited time. And there's no way on earth that Harry is going to be getting millions of pounds out of his brother, not after what went on. So establishment, maybe there's a bit of a father-son thing going on, but I don't necessarily believe it's wider than that.
But would you agree
Well, I
with the
see.
point that Harry is a liability? There's many
If King
similarities
Charles
between,
getting a
I
little bit of
believe,
a soft touch in
his
for
greed for
Harry.
money like Andrew had
For
and
once.
probably still
Andrew's
has.
had, yeah.
It's
Of King
a
Charles to
big
get him out
problem
the
for
Epstein
the
files
firm
and all of
to
that.
have Harry going
He's
off
still not
left,
been done
right
yet,
and
hasn't he, for
centre.
all of that.
Much easier for the firm to
Nope.
try and
Not
control
proper
him if they say,
investigation
right,
to
here's
Prince
Travelist,
Andrew.
here's
Done.
Invictus,
That's what
and here are
Epstein's
some
saying.
frameworks whereby
Didn't
you
all
can
work
look
the way
like you're
they're saying,
important,
kissed
you
down
get
and the
that
rest of it.
royal seal of approval, you will get these events, because ultimately,
Hitler
and this
selling
isn't me
his
being
It's
nasty,
not the way
Harry's
they
not very
said about
smart.
Hitler even.
He's not William. And so, if the establishment, we're looking at the most powerful family in the world, the royal family as a brand, nothing touches it. So, having Prince Harry with no purpose is very, very bad for the firm. So, what I mean by the establishment plot is they've almost created a world for him with these stabilizers. So it keeps him in the middle, and he doesn't need to go off and do an Andrew, go to the UAE, get millions, and dilute the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Much.
But they can't control that. They can't control this guy. He's a loose cannon. I mean, there's no way. They can't trust him and they can't control him. This is a guy that's a man-child. He throws all his toys out of the pram if he doesn't get what he wants. But he has employed some half-decent PR guys. They've wooed a couple of journalists. Telegraph went out to Australia with him. Other Australian journalist went out and did that Australian trip, and they've fed them a few crumbs. They're the people that probably have come up with the story that he's coming over with the family. So he's wooed a few journalists. Journalists are fickle, but I think that they shouldn't really be too surprised that what his PR men are doing is wooing them, getting them on side, and giving them a little taster for a story because they know it's clickbait. They know they can get their story, and the legacy media can get a splash story out of it. So my feeling is that the people around the king are worried that Harry is playing, that the king still loves his son, and I think that the fact that he's now seen him twice, probably less than an hour, and the whole time we're talking here, in that time, is being seen by some as a moment of weakness by the king. I just think it's a human situation. Harry is using him, using everybody, because at the end of the day, both Harry and Meghan know, without the royal family, he's a retired army captain, and she's a bit part actress who had a good hit a few years ago. There's really nobody who's going to listen to them. I was out in LA quite recently. I went up to the coast, and I was speaking actually with Andrew Morton at a big event at the Jonathan Club. Big event. It was actually quite a really good event. But nobody there. All the society of LA, they're all there. They don't really want anything to do with this couple anymore. So really, being up in Montecito, which is quite a long way up the coast, they're out of the way. Nobody really cares what they've got to say, and they're probably looking for some sort of big push for their brand and for who they are, and that involves being close to the royal family. So I think the pushing's coming from them. There are obviously some people who would prefer a quiet life with Harry, and I'm sure people close to the king said it is better to have him on the tent, looking out rather than looking in, and that's something that I'm sure that is being worked at in a way around the edges. But if the king is not here tomorrow, that is all off. All bets are off because William is not going to have it.
What do you make of the news that came out that Buckingham Palace will never be lived in again? This seems... I was speechless. It seems very final, and especially when we look at then the defender of the faith, that change.
Well, there's two massive decisions here. Again, I've been around long enough, and they're probably hoping that people like me aren't around long enough with elephant brains. But the fact is, I was in a press conference around about the time they started this work. And let's just for a second pause and say how much money we're dealing with here. £369 million. I know I heard some ex-press officer, it's not that much money. £369 million. Fortunes you can't really get your head around. Now, they said, the questions were asked by the journalist at the time, I was there, and we said, well, this obviously will remain a royal residence. So we're spending all this, spending all this money, absolutely no question, it will remain a royal residence. In fact, Her Majesty the Queen will only move out to Windsor for a short while, and then she will be back in, and it will always remain a royal residence. In that meantime, there's been several stories saying it's not going to become a royal residence. It's not going to become a royal residence. They're never going to move back in. All denied by the palace. Oh no, that's just not true. Then, in a slip of a pen, it's not happening. Now that's obviously coming from both the king and William. The king, probably didn't ever want to move into the palace. I mean, the late Queen really Philip wanted to stay at Clarence House. But the fact is, all this money has been spent. If that was just going to become another museum or a place where we have a few garden parties, then maybe the scale of the renovations could have been cut by about a third because it doesn't have to have the gilt everywhere. So what is this all about? I mean, I think that it's a shocker, and I think that in this current climate, where the royal family's money has gone up, you have to ask George Osborne how much money it's gone up by. Even he thinks he made a mistake in shifting the way it was all organised. When there are fewer royals to spend it on, it seems ridiculous that we're now spending 369 million on what is effectively an office block. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. And it's a pretty office block. There's no question in my mind now. They should say, no, Your Majesty, this is the situation. Either you're going to live there or we open it to the public all through the year, and you, the royal family, effectively have to pay for our revenue from your money from the sovereign grant, you get loads. When you use it, i.e. for the state opening parliament, or when you use it for a trip in the colour, or when you've got a garden party, that you can use it. You have a couple of days where it's free for you to use. The rest of the time, throughout the entire year, it's open to the public. And you can go and get the offices, put them in office, all these other people that are living there, there's, staff are living there. No, they'll have to just be paid proper wages by the king, and they go and find their own flats and their own properties. The rest of it has to be open to the public.
Do you think we're looking at, in the near future, the royal family privatising themselves? For me, it feels like these are very deliberate moves to step things down so it's not overnight, and so also these big changes don't fall when Prince William becomes king. It's to slowly start, well, it doesn't feel slowly though, does it?
Well, I think that they've realised when we saw the audit, and when we saw all of the people living in properties all over the place. I mean, we know for a fact that a number of these members of staff, high-ranking officials, private secretaries, equerries, crown equerries, all of them live in these properties at cheap rate and relatively cheap. They sure they're paying the state proper rent. They're not. They're paying a much lower rent, and they're renting their properties out. Now, if they were MPs, that would be a massive, massive scandal. Now, we know that they get decent rates to stay in these properties. I think all of that's going to end. The monarchy is now getting more money than it's ever had before. Just pay the people that work for you the salary that is right, then let them sort out their own mortgage and live in their own house. Okay? The rest of these properties, if they can be rented out, or they can be open to the public. Whatever it is, I think with Buckingham Palace, the place should be open to the public. I think it should be open to the public pretty much all year round now, because it's not going to be the headquarters. What does that mean? It means you have the odd reception there, and the money that's been spent on that is just not cost effective. And having all your staff living there at the HQ is not right. Just pay them the salary from the massive increase in money you've got, and let them find their own properties. Now, I also think that the people really will be questioning why a monarch
and they've had it all done up, and I bet
need so many houses. The privately owned Sandringham, he privately owns Balmoral, he lives at Windsor Castle, he also rents for £500,000 a year at Highgrove. Why do you need so many houses? I mean, I think people, when we're dealing with the homeless crisis that William wants to solve, will question that. And William, I think, is probably looking at this from with two hats. One, he's now a billionaire, by the way, because of the amount of money he's got from his Duchy of Cornwall and other investments. He really is in a position to make big changes. I think in his heart he wants to change. He doesn't want to be the monarch. He doesn't see it right. It seems right to have so many big houses and properties, and he does care about homelessness. And he's trying to make himself look more man of the people. But until the monarchy has a good look at itself, restructures itself, and stops making sort of underhand little gestures like, oh, well, just slip that in. We're no longer going to be defender of the faith. Slip that in. Oh, we're not going to live at Buckingham Palace. These are big decisions. They've not been discussed. And I think that really the public have just taken it on the chin a little bit, but a lot of things have happened
Taking
since
it on the chin
COVID,
as well.
and we're seeing a completely
You
different
get out.
reshaped monarchy. Will it last? I think I'd say be careful what you wish for in terms of making big changes.
Yeah.
Because, you know, do they want a Scandinavian style monarchy
No, I don't.
with
Get
less
out for
relevance?
it,
I think they probably want the cake and eat it. They want both. They want to do less. They want to
get paid more and do less more. We can get out there.
do the jobs they want to do, and not necessarily do all the
Jobs
traditional
that
stuff.
need doing.
And I agree with some of that, because I
For the
think some of it is
people.
pointless.
Things
Some
that
of the
need
flummery
doing for
is
the people.
pointless and doesn't really give us anything extra. But you know, all I would say to them is be very
And for
careful,
the
because
country.
everyone goes on about how much the Buckingham Palace is visited because it's an
Well,
inhabited
what
royal
government
palace.
did to help
Actually, the
them
most
for a whole
visited
house country.
palace in the
Help
world
them
is
in the
Versailles,
country.
and we all know what happened there.
Robert, as always,
help
I love
for
talking
people
to
to
you.
train
You offer
for being
an
doctors
insight
and
that I
nurses.
don't think anyone else can offer,
In
and your
fact.
Substack is fantastic. I love it when you're out reporting, you offer your subscribers clips and insights they won't get anywhere else. So I'm putting it on the screen now, and please, insiders, make sure you are subscribed to the godfather of royal reporting, his Substack. Thank you.
Thank you.
King Charles
Thanks very
is
much.
gonna be, because it's King Charles has gone ridiculous. Annie, shame on the king, man. Sick of it. Sick of all this. Oh, for fuck's sake, bloody Starmer again.
Mr. Speaker, what happened to them and
No,
to tens
good
of thousands of mothers, children and families should never have happened. It is a stain on our history.
Yeah,
Mothers, many young, vulnerable or without support,
like
were
me.
coerced, bullied or misled into feeling that they had no choice but to have their children taken away from them.
Like me.
What a
Thank
thing
you.
to do.
Wrongly
Mr. Speaker, these were
forced
not
adopted.
isolated or
No, it's
accidental
not.
acts. They were practices embedded within systems across local authorities, across voluntary and faith-based institutions, and in health
For
and social
adoption,
care
yeah.
services, including parts of what is now the NHS. All institutions that operated with power over people's lives. Yet they did so without compassion, without consent, and without dignity or proper safeguards. Mr. Speaker, these practices were particularly prevalent between 1949 and 1976,
Yeah, that's
but also
option
extended beyond those
Yeah,
years.
and it has, because to Sarah
In some cases, women, including those placed in mother and baby homes and other institutional settings,
So
were
that's
cut off
option
from
to
their
them.
families,
Yeah.
relationships, education and employment, and
Like me,
subjected
Sarah
to
Jane.
harsh and
I've been
isolated
in care, my
conditions.
mum was adopted.
Some experienced treatment
And
that
now
amounted
we've got
to
Sarah Jane.
exploitation and abuse.
Yep.
Mr. Speaker, many were made to feel ashamed, and that came through very, very powerfully in the discussions I had
Yeah,
this morning.
and I have been made to
Silence
feel ashamed and
And
silent.
unworthy of care or dignity. Children grew up believing that they were unwanted.
Yeah, like
Young
Sarah
mothers
Jane
were
is
told
going to
that
be.
they were immoral,
That we
that
were
their
wrong,
babies
I
would
was
be
wrong,
better off
and
without
I'm
them.
not.
and
This is
again,
Keir
as they told
Starmer
us
for once
morning,
actually speaking
that
some
lasts a
sense or
lifetime.
something.
and has a
Fuck's
huge impact. Anne Lloyd Keane,
Well,
here
he's
in the
probably just
gallery,
lying
of course
anyway, but
formerly
anyhow.
of this house, described to the Education Committee how she was stitched without anaesthetic and said, and I quote, that she was told, "You will remember the pain because you've been a bad girl." Mr. Speaker, many of those harmed in this way feel a gut-wrenching sense of shame, and Anne and others have
Had the
said that
baby
stayed
taken
with
away,
her,
yeah.
and that she still feels it today. And I
Same as
know
me, and I
that this
still feel
apology
it
will not
today.
be able to lift
No,
that
it won't.
completely. It
We
will
can get
help
my
a
little
little,
girl
I
back,
hope,
that's what can
but it
do
won't
and
lift it
help.
completely.
That's what
And
can help.
today I say to
Mate,
Anne,
what
to
can
whom
help
I'm here in
is
the
you help.
gallery with
Get
us,
Sarah Jane
to
back
all
to me,
those
that's a start.
impacted
That would
and
be
affected,
a good
wherever they
start.
are in the country.
You've got one
Many,
mother
many
that's
thousands of
perfectly
them,
healthy,
including some
perfectly
who
fit,
still
and
have
fine.
not been able to speak
Right.
about what happened to them
And
to this
okay,
day.
I'm not saying she could
And
come
I
back to
hope
me straight
that this
away.
statement,
I
this
know there's
apology,
going to be a
perhaps
process.
give some of
And me
them
having to
the
see her and
confidence
contact and
to
things.
speak about
because
what happened to them,
I can't
because it
just
will
do that
help
to my
in a
little
small
girl.
way.
She could be happy in her life.
But I say this,
But I don't know
the
that.
shame is not
And that's
yours.
what I want to be in. I want to be able to
The
know
shame
that.
was never yours.
No, the shame is never
The
mine.
shame is ours.
Yeah, the shame is yours, not mine.
And I say that on
I want
behalf of the
Sarah
whole
Jane
country.
back to me.
I say it to every single person impacted. We are deeply
I should be
and
allowed to be
profoundly
part of her
sorry.
life, to be able to see her, have
To the
contact
mothers
with
who were
her.
told they were unfit, who were prevented from caring for the children they desperately
And
wanted to
at
help
the time,
and to keep.
at the time, she did
and who've
need to
carried
go
this
into
loss for
care for a
decades.
couple of weeks because I
To
wasn't.
those who were not given the
At the time,
information
I
they
was
needed
poorly.
to provide informed
I
consent,
did have
who faced
severe,
pressure or coercion,
the severe
and who
depression
experienced
with baby
practices
blues, and I
that were
wasn't
unethical.
well. At that time, when they did take Sarah Jane, her dad was doing what he was doing, being a pedo and whatever else. And at the time, I wasn't very well myself, and I had no other support. So, yeah, I probably did need the help of the social services in the system at the time. But the help I didn't need was for them to do what they've done and take my rights away completely. I begged them at Manchester Family Court. I wrote to them. Okay, my spelling and things wasn't all perfect, but I can understand what I'm saying in my letter. So they can understand clearly what I'm saying. And I begged them to keep her on a full care order. That she stayed in care at that moment in time, but she stays on a care order with the same parents. But no, they had to go and a doctor within 6 months because that's what they do with children. They don't give 6 months is not long enough to decide for a child to be adopted. That's not long enough. It's not long enough that I mean, unless it is a complete necessary where unfortunately mum and dad's, if the baby's born and mum's passed away, there is no father, there is nobody else to have the baby, then that's fair enough, then it would go straight in for a doctor to somebody. And I get that part, and I do get that we're doing these social services for children that are in a need, like that little Pakistani girl, no offence, she was in a need to be in care, taken from the parents, taken away. And I'm sure they must have had other Muslim families, I'm sure they must have other Muslim families that are foster carers and things that could have foster cared that little girl. And, well, to me, so what if a few police cars got burnt up? What? So the more asked about a few police cars getting burnt up than the little girl's life. Great. I mean, that's how pathetic the country really is, isn't it?
To the sons and daughters
It